How you doing? This is Coach DeCarlo. Today we're going to talk about the still small voice, and we're going to debunk the belief that God is not still speaking. I've talked to coaching clients and non-clients, and often I hear, if God would just speak to me as he did with Jesus or the people in the Bible, Moses, Noah. Let me say that God is still speaking. The problem is we're not listening. Or when we hear it, we discount the voice because it sounds so much like our own. So we say, of course, this can't be God. But what we learn from Scripture, from the time of Adam and Eve to the time of Jesus, as I often say from Genesis to Revelation, this is your story. What we discover in Scripture, when we read the story about Moses, for example, it says that Moses saw a burning bush and he turned aside to see this bush that was burning, but yet it wasn't consumed. Moses began to speak with the burning bush, symbolic of desire. Moses had a deep yearning in his heart to hear from God. The symbolism came in the form of a burning bush. And Moses came up with all these excuses why he could not go and free the children of Israel, why he could not communicate to Pharaoh. So much so that God told Moses that he would send his brother Aaron. Aaron would speak on Moses' behalf because Moses did not believe that he was articulate. Many of us, like Moses, come up with excuses that keep us from living out the life of God. Many people, when they hear that, they think that I'm talking about some religious calling. Look at my video called The Calling. And what you'll discover is the calling is what you're being, doing, having at the moment. Even if you're in error, that's the calling of God. God is experiencing himself in you as you. That's the calling. Once you begin to direct your attention on the deeper things of your life, I was going to say the deeper things of God, but I don't want to make it sound religious. Once you begin to focus your life on the deeper meaning of your life, and you decide what you want to be, do, and have, then you will begin to experience living from that desired end. That's the calling of God in your life. Someone inquired with Jesus, what is it that we must do to do the works of God? And Jesus says, believe on him, her, who God has sent. Now, many of us would just take that as a biblical reference to Jesus. But it's more than that. It's the I am within you. When Jesus says, believe on him who God has sent, he's speaking of the God sent in the form of you. Believe in yourself. Believe in the calling, the desires, the longings that you have in your life, and begin living from that desired end, and so shall it be. That's God's calling. That's God speaking to you. But let's touch on some scripture here. I want to go to the book of Job. In Job 33, verses 14 through 16, the writer says this, for God may speak in one way or another, and yet man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, in a slumber upon the bed, then he, being God, will open the ears of men, women, made he them, and seal their instruction. So what are we saying? For those who believe that God's not speaking, it's not that God is not speaking, it's that we've tuned out. We're no longer listening to the voice of God in our lives. Well, you say, well, Coach, how does one do that? I was talking to a coaching client recently, and he said, I'm not sure what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And as we continued on in our conversation, he disclosed that many years ago, God had told him what it was that he was supposed to be doing. And he was being disobedient because he saw this manifestation only happening in one way, not looking at the million other possibilities that God could manifest that call in his life. But because he saw that manifestation only in one way, he fled the call. This particular client has been swallowed up in the belly of the well of confusion, frustration. All of the works of his hands seem to be coming to naught. And he's now coming to a point that he's ready to hear the calling of God. And I told him, I said, listen, what you have to understand is that the calling of God will not only be a blessing to you, but to others that you will begin sharing that call with. And what you'll discover is God's going to bless you more than you can ask, think, and or imagine. He said he's going to bless you such a way that the floodgates of heaven will be open and that there will not be room enough to store. Said that it will be pressed down, shaken together, and running over will he bless you. Understand this. There's multiple things that you've been created to do. Your greatness is not confined to just one thing. But when you discover the one thing and you begin living obediently towards that one thing, it's going to open up the possibilities of multiple other things. You can't grow beyond your disobedience. Let me say that again. You can't grow, you can't move beyond your disobedience. If you're disobedient in the thing that God's called you to do, and only you know what that thing is. But if you're disobedient in that thing, whatever that thing is, and when I say disobedient, when you're not living the life that you're supposed to live, then you're being disobedient. We call that missing the mark. We call that sin. We're not talking anything bad. You're just off track. If you're not doing what you were created to do, what you find is a life that's unfulfilling, desperate, unhappy, void of purpose, and you keep wondering what it is that you can do to fix this thing. And the funny thing is, many creators have found that even when they've made a lot of money doing the thing that they haven't been called to do, the money does not bring fulfillment. When you get on track and you do that thing that you've always longed to do, you're good at doing, the thing that the world needs from you, then you're operating God's calling in your life. And God has spoken to each and every one of us. Many people would discount that and say, no, he hasn't spoken to me. No, it's not true. If you've lived any amount of time, simply being a child over 7 years old, as children, we have visions, we have dreams, we have things that we long to do. There were things that I longed to do as a child of 7 that I'm now doing as an adult. And this is sharing with you. I didn't see how that was possible because I was extremely shy as a child. I didn't see myself speaking before others. I was like Moses, and I said somebody else is going to have to go before me because I'm not articulate enough to share what's been given to me. Mr. Linder will often say this: do a thing and you shall have the power. And there's only one power, and that power is God. When you begin doing the thing that you've been called to do, that you've been directed to do, that you've been gifted to do, the power to do that thing will be present. It will be more than present. You will have a reserve. You will have untold energy. It says that you will be lifted up on the wings of eagles. When you're not doing that thing, even the money, the relationships, the thing that you thought would bring you happiness will be that void in your life. Many people have lived for others. They've gotten educations and so forth for other people, and they didn't do the thing that they were passionate about, and they died unfulfilled in this lifetime. Other people stepped off the path of what others called them to do and began doing what it was that they were passionate about doing. Early on, when they started doing that thing, they didn't even think that there was money in the doing of that thing. Once they started infusing that thing with life energy, the doing of that thing, once they received the power from doing that thing, what they found was not only did they find fulfillment in that thing, they also found that they were being a service of others, and therefore they were being compensated for their doing of the thing that they thought initially would not bring them the reserve that they needed, that they wanted, that they desired. When you begin living from your passion, then you're living God's purpose in the world for you. Michael Jordan discovered that through basketball. Tiger Woods discovered that through golf. Muhammad Ali discovered that through boxing. Joyce Myers discovered that through pastoring. Joseph Murphy, Neville Goddard discovered that through teaching. Whatever that thing that you've been gifted to do, we're told, do that thing with all of our might. When you do it with such conviction, your reward is well on its way. When God speaks, He speaks often in a still small voice. And that voice will often sound much like your own. We're told, for God may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, in slumbering upon the bed, then He opens the ears of men and seals their instructions. Remember, when God's speaking, often it'll sound like your own voice. And some would inquire, well, how can I tell the difference between God's voice and that of ego? Ego comes in the form of condemnation, must, have to, all the things as such. Whereas the voice of God always moves you loveward. What do I mean by that? God says, through the person of Jesus, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself." When we're talking about loveward, we're talking about honoring God, honoring yourself, and honoring others. When your call fulfills all of those, or what we call the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, then you're moving loveward. But remember this, creators, that only you can create your perfect world. Not God or man. Only you can create your perfect world. This is Coach DeCarlo saying have a great and abundant day.